this was in the early 70s. I don't remember the exact years that I was president of the alumni. But as president of the Alumni Association, I was privy to the trustee meetings and sit and keep my mouth shut. I wasn't supposed to say anything. Well, after about a couple of these, I got real concerned about Randolph-Macon College. I didn't think we were financially sound, and I didn't see us doing what we had to do to become financially sound. After the war, they decided that in managing an endowment that you could use the total return concept, because blue chips were gaining in value, but they weren't yielding many dollars in dividends. Mm-hmm. So you could take the total return concept and sell some stock in order to get up to 10% a year. That's fine in a growing market when all of your stocks in your endowment are growing, like doubling in a year, and some real outstanding growth records. But when the market's going down, you're selling expensive stuff at cheap prices. And I didn't think that was right. So legally, there wasn't anything wrong with that. I mean, legally, that was okay. But I reviewed it. I was at that time working in fundraising at the Darden School at UVA. And I went to a couple of the finance professors, and they laughed at me. They said, nobody would do that. And so I wrote a pretty tough letter to the trustees saying that we weren't going in the right direction. And one night coming home from Rotary, I gave our dean, Shepard, a ride home. He lived on the lawn at the university. And I told him about it. He says, well, come in, let's work on the letter, Ed. So I showed him the letter, and we went over it, and he advised me to correct some things. Nothing in the letter was negative. Nothing in the letter was personal or critical. And he said, you have to have a positive suggestion. And so I suggested a strategic planning committee, and I suggested even put the names of the people that I thought ought to be in there. I thought the Bishop of the Methodist Church should appoint a member. There should be a member of the faculty that had respect from everybody, i.e. Hunter Jones. There should be a member of the alumni that was accessible and understood finances, but understood the college, and that was Ned Stiles. Mm-hmm. And I thought they should go outside and get a consultant. And we had a man on the faculty at the Darden School, Tompkins, whose brother was here in fundraising. And Curtis Tompkins taught the management of non-for-profit institutions. And I suggested he be hired as a consultant, and I talked Curtis into doing this whole job for $500, which was almost nothing. But I would drive him down here to the meetings. I didn't go to the meetings, but I would drive him down here. And when I'm getting ahead of myself, I wrote this letter, I took it to the board, the alumni board, and I read it to them, and they were astounded and shocked. And I will forget, Doug Dalton was on the board, on my alumni board. And I had read it to the president, past president of the Alumni Association. I had read it to the president of the college, Luther White. I read it to the president of the trustees. So when I took it to the trustees, and I couldn't give it verbally, I had to read it, because it was just too important. There were no surprises. Everybody knew it was coming. Everybody knew what it was. But those that didn't know, I mean, the important people all knew, were just shocked. And my closing comment was, when your debt, and we were borrowing money to operate, when our debt at the college reaches the level of the endowment, the banks will put a lock on our gate, because the buildings aren't worth a hoot, not any value, except to teach. And if you haven't got the money to teach, there's no value here, and they'll put us out of business. And I'd rather see Randolph-Macon do an orderly liquidation than be shut down on bankruptcy. And it just, those aren't the exact words, but the report is somewhere. You can find it in the trustee minutes. It really did shake them up. and Walter Craigie was on the board, and he, let me see, how did he put it? He said, I move that the trustees adopt these recommendations of Ed's 100%. And it was seconded and passed unanimously, right there on the spot. I felt like some sort of a hero. Here's this little alumni guy coming into the trustees. I'm convinced, though, they did really do a job. The trustees really realized something was wrong. There was a trustee on the admissions committee. There was a trustee on every operating committee in the college, working with them and helping them. And what went on after that was just amazing. Even Luther White said it was miraculous. And I'm convinced that if we hadn't done that, we would have been in the same shape that our sister institution in Lynchburg is in today. And they're coming out of the hole. We didn't go in the hole. We turned it around before it was too late. And I just really think that was one of the finest memories I have of my work here at the college.
I didn't know that story. And we're doing that period. Dr. Scanlon is currently writing the second half of the history. So he's doing a lot of financial, it'll be interesting to see it reflected.
He should read that letter.
Well, he's read the trustees' minutes.
He might not have seen that letter.
I'll,
That could have been an attachment, rather than part of the minutes.
mm-hmm.
But he really should see that. In the long-range committee, and it was named for one of the trustees. My name was taken out of it right away.
Tell me the year again.
It was in the early 70s, 2 or 3. I've still got my copy of the letter. In fact, I just sent a copy of it to Ned Stiles because he remembered it and couldn't find his. And I've got a date on it. I could look at it. Gosh, if I'd realized that, I'd have brought a copy with me. But Scanlon should see that.
You should see that. He's
Yes.
doing the 70s
Yeah.
now. I know
I've
he's
read
working on the
his book,
70s now.
And I'm amazed at the people connected with the college that haven't read his book. His book is very detailed, very good. Everybody should read it. Gets you right into the middle of curriculum, which becomes very boring. But when I was here, you came in under a curriculum, and we would decide, I want to go to the new curriculum because it doesn't require 2 languages, an old and a new. So the new curriculum was an old and a new. But if you were in the new curriculum, you had to do the great books. You had to read books and take written exams on it. And then they came out with another curriculum that had the senior projects, which you'd seen,
Mm-hmm.
which made up two courses, 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so the new curriculum, you had the old new curriculum and the new curriculum, and it was really a buzz bomb to see which one you came in on. You could upgrade, but you couldn't backgrade. So that was quite a game we played.
We'll backpedal a little bit. My name is Judy Showalter, and today is February 22nd. And we're here as part of the Living Legacies Oral History Project with Edward Dinwiddie, class of 1951. And Sarah Hendricks is also here with us today. So the curriculum you're talking about was the curriculum change in 48, 49?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's back up a little bit even more than that. How did you come to Randolph-Macon? How did you first hear about it?
I had 2 brothers and a cousin here, and that's all I'd ever heard was Randolph-Macon.
Okay.
They brought people home, fraternity brothers home with them for weekends.
And where was home?
Waynesboro.
Okay. And you also have a son that came.
Yes.
Is that the end of the family, or are there
Well, he's got a
cousins
daughter
and
that
such?
we would like to come here, but I don't know, she got impressed with Appalachian State when they beat Michigan or something. So I don't know what's going to happen to Elizabeth. I have brought her down here, but I haven't sold her on anything yet.
My 17-year-old is Randolph-Macon or Bridgewater.
Well,
He's between the two, so you got to let them make up their own
that's
mind.
right. All you can do is ask questions.
So with other family members here, do you remember the first time that you visited the college?
Probably I was 7 or 8 years old and came with my parents to visit a brother and spent the afternoon on the porch of the Phi Cap house.
So your brothers were Phi Caps?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you afford a Randolph-Macon education? Did you work?
I had part-time jobs in the summer,
Okay.
and I was a student assistant in education one year, and I had Christmas jobs. Most of that was spending money. My dad paid the tuition.
Okay, when
All of $400 or something like that.
I should have looked. That's a good question. I should look that up next time. It's in the catalogs.
I know my junior year, I had a classmate that went through on $1,000, got covered everything.
Wow.
Billy Hodges, who's a retired judge. And he said he was going to get through on $100, on $1,000 that year. That included fraternity and everything. But that was 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm. You said you were a student assistant in education.
Yeah.
What did student assistants do?
Ran a projector, took the role. Sometimes, this was Dr. Ehrlich Smith, who was quite famous at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And when he would get the exams, get the grades ready, I don't think he ever gave anything below a B. Dave Mefford and I would go over to his house and run through the roll with him and make sure all the Phi Caps got A's and B's. And he was a Phi Cap also, as was Dr. McConnell, our sociology professor.
And what was your major?
Economics.
Economics, okay.
It wasn't a strong major. My best course was a taxation under Hunter Jones, and I couldn't take accounting because I was going out, and it was a full year course, and I was leaving in the spring for the service, and so I couldn't take his. I had to take it at UVA that summer, and they transferred it for me as a major course. And then I had econ under Wendell Lewis. Money and banking under a jerk that they hired to teach it here, and he only lasted one semester. Or 1 year. He was not much of a teacher. Can't remember his name. Just good.
You've mentioned several of the big ones. Who were like Hunter Jones? Who were the Randolph-Macon institutions at that time?
Dr. Schuyler Miller, who taught organic and chemistry, and as well as his love, geology. There were 5 science courses that were called 10 courses. They had no lab. And if you were going to major in English or anything other than science, you had to take 4 of them. And you had physics under Dr. Keeble, biology under Dr. Bullington, physics under Keeble or English, and geology under
Miller.
And then we had a chemistry under Updike or Bolling, or anybody over there taught the chemistry part of it. And the geology under Dr. Miller was probably one of the toughest courses I ever took at Randolph-Macon. The most fun, and took almost as much time as taxation under Hunter Jones. It was just an excellent course, and was just outstanding. Everybody remembers it. And I still have my notes, but I still like to go look at them because, you have a good prof. It's easy to take good notes that you can read, and they still make sense to me. I go back and look things up in them every now and then. But that was outstanding. I don't remember much of the English. I took Dr. Bowen in Latin, and panel was He's an outstanding Bible professor. And I took my Bible under him. He was very good. Well, all of them were. I mean, they had quality then just like they do now.
Now, when you said those guys over there, can you tell us a little bit about the physical layout of the campus?
Did I say those guys over there?
Yeah, when you were referring to the science professors, who I assume were all teaching in Smithy Hall?
Wasn't called that then. We had to, I don't remember the names. I don't know what that must have been just the slur that I made.
Okay.
That I can't.
Well, no, I was just hoping, because I have been asked recently where education and the psychology classes that went with education were
Okay.
taught, and I don't know what building they were taught in. So I was hoping you remember.
Well, it was the second floor of the first building where the art department is now.
Where the art department is
Where
now,
they
so
teach
Pace
art.
Hall.
Pace. That
Okay.
chemistry was on the first floor, and we took sociology, economics, psychology, all of that I took over there on the second floor.
Thank you.
Taxation.
The psychology students who are currently researching the history of the department, well, thank you for that answer,
Yeah,
because
that's
we've
where
been
it was.
hunting.
Dr. Ewing, was it?
McWayne.
McEwen.
McEwen.
Yeah.
McEwen.
Superb.
Yeah, McEwen was.
Very good. The field trips under him were just, he really brought things very understandable. We took in Williamsburg, I guess what it was, Eastern Hospital
Mhm.
then, and we really went through the ropes down there. He really did give us a day in what we called an insane asylum then, but it was a mental hospital, and he really introduced us to schizophrenia and the causes, and showed us patients in schizophrenia. I'll never forget it. I think that's a museum now. I don't think it's even a hospital anymore. Do you know it?
I do, and it's not a hospital. I think I think they've converted it completely into something
Yeah.
completely unrelated to some.
It might be a museum, and there's a museum underground under it or something like that.
My father always points it out as
Yeah.
he, having gone to William and Mary, claimed that they could hear the screams coming from.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll never forget those trips down there to show us kids our age now. Our age, young adults that were in that place for the rest of their lives. Boy, it really left a scar on you to think about it. And some of it was parental causes, by demanding excellence. And just they couldn't live up to their parental demands. It was very impressive. So you got a good liberal arts education in those days. You got a little bit of everything.
It sounds like, as
And,
an econ
question
major
about it.
now, I don't think they get any psychology. I don't.
When I took
They
that
certainly don't get any geology.
abnormal psych, and my last year I didn't need but one course because I had dropped out my sophomore year, and thought I was going to flunk out, so just decided I wasn't coming back. And then when I got home and got my grades, I found out I had made a B in a lab course rather than a D, and so that gave me double quality credits, and it gave me my C average. So I was coming back, but I was already gone. I'd already decided to go to Texas, work for a semester. Then I got my notice, a draft notice, and the Korean War was on, and so I wrote Dr. Simpson, said I wanted to come back to school, and I told him when I was coming back, and I got a letter from him saying he would decide when I came back, that I wouldn't, and if I came back, he would be my advisor. So I came back to Randolph-Macon, and Dr. T. McNaughter Simpson was my advisor for one semester. He got me straightened out and off on the right track, and then turned me over to, I guess it was Baskin, Dr. Baskin, who was at UVA then getting a PhD. So I would see him when I was home on weekends. His office was in a trailer there, and I'd go by and see him, and that's how I would keep things going in economics. But I got really fouled up when you drop out of a semester and you've got all these one-year courses and you took one semester, and when do you get the second semester? And so I ended up with a whole lot of electives there at the end, 3 or 4 electives, really strange. And that's when I took the abnormal psych and American history under Mabry, just to get exposure to some that I hadn't had before. And I still think that's a good idea.
You also earlier said something about the changes in curriculum, and one thing I have been curious about is how the students felt about the institution of the senior project. Was there a lot of resistance?
I don't know that we...
Our
Some
students
dropped out rather than do it.
Our students now are odd. They look at the senior projects and they say, wow, I don't know if I'd do it if I knew I had to do this. Now some of them say, wow, what a neat idea, how challenging. But they're awed by the idea of this senior project. So I wondered how the students then felt about it.
I think some felt that way, but I think if you found a topic that you were interested in, my brother was then a cotton glasser or a cotton shipper in Dallas, and I thought if I learned something about the cotton business, that maybe is where I could find a job. And so that's why I did it, and I had lots of help. I'd spend a weekend in Danville with one of the young managers there, learning cotton in a cotton mill, and letters with some of the leaders in the cotton business. My brother would give me these leads of people that I could go to see and talk to and write letters to and get things from. And I really enjoyed that part of it. It was, I was in textiles most of my life from a standpoint of my father was a DuPont in Waynesboro that made acetate rayon. And I worked there in the summer. And it was natural for me to learn something about natural. These were man-made fibers as opposed to natural fibers in cotton. Mm-hmm. But that was just an interest. And if you get a project that follows your interest and you've got a source for material, I think it can be really interesting.
I think they're interesting. I enjoy seeing what students were studying at various phases.
Yeah.
You've talked quite a bit about your Phi Cap brothers. Can you tell us some about some of the other activities that went on campus? The non-academic student life?
Well, we had a big thing on homecoming because we decorated the houses. We'd spend weeks trying to win that contest of the best decorated house. And my roommate was really good at it, and he had the best one and didn't win it. And so the next year he wouldn't do it, and I had to do it, and I won it. It was very simple. But that was a big thing, is getting what are you going to do with your house for homecoming. And then decorating for Panhells was just, we would take that gym down there. I don't know how they ever got a basketball game going after we finished, because I know that one year that Mefford and I built a fountain and had a big thing of a pond of water in the middle of the dance floor. And people started throwing coins at it that night, so we felt we were going to meet our decorating budget by cleaning the fountain out the next day, and by the time we got there, it had been cleaned out. So we don't think it was done by students because of the honor system. But that's probably one of the more disappointing things to know, is that we don't have the honor system today that we had when I was here, because I think we took it pretty seriously. And maybe it's not working today, and so maybe it's better that Randolph-Macon doesn't have the same system that we had when I was here. Because my last year here would have been, my roommate was a senior, and I was a hangover. He was president of student body, Dr. John Smith. And I can remember doing exam period, and he was a chemistry major. He would be out half the night on trials. Somebody coming before the honor committee, and of course I couldn't know what he was doing or who he was talking about. I knew where he was going, and I could guess what it was. So there was a pretty serious concept that I'm sorry that's not there, because they could really built something into the college. The dance decorations and everybody was into something always. The drama department, it was all student run. We had one, Lala Rolfe, who was famous in Richmond in the Barksdale Theater, was our director. And it was a part-time job for her, as many of our extracurricular activities were run by people as a volunteer, and they did it out of interest. We would really work hard on that. And I can remember building flats, and we used the auditorium at the high school. And we would only have 1 week to get ready and show it for 2 nights. And we would have some townspeople in it, and I was always a set construction, that part of it. Intramurals were big. All of us had a team. And I can remember that one year there were only about 7 actives in the Phi Kappa house, and we won the football and the volleyball, I think, cup in intramurals that year. But we had a tight fraternity, very close. We still are. Still get together frequently. That class, 51, 52. There are not many living still in my 51 class, but I kind of slipped into 52, and that's been real active. Richmond was parties on weekends were great because nobody had cars. You hitchhike where you had to go. I had some throat work that had to be done my last year to pass my physical for the Air Force, and I actually hitchhiked home every week on Wednesday to Waynesboro from here for 3:15 or 3:45 appointment, and just go right back on the road and hitchhike back to school. I didn't even stop and have dinner with my folks sometimes. I was on such a tight schedule. But hitchhiking was just like better than riding a bus. You don't do that anymore either.
Don't do that anymore either.
But we had our little rat caps. We'll put that on, and you could hitchhike anywhere with that.
Mr. Forrester also referred to them as rat caps, and I have always been told they were fish caps.
Fish caps might have been.
I say now.
Yeah, that's probably more accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, that probably is more fish caps.
I just never knew the freshmen were called rats. I thought they were always called fish.
That's probably right.
It's just that
we were called rats in the fraternity, I think, as when we were pledges. Maybe that's where it's crept in.
That makes sense. I'll have to think about that. Upstairs, you told us about ribbon societies, which has been a question that we get in the archive from time to time. What were the ribbon societies?
Well, there were 2. My brothers were both Levin Club, and I don't know how I got missed the Levin Club. But I never will forget when I was asked to join the Black Eye Club. It was a real treat. You really were in a secret organization, not like the 7 Club at the UVA, but it was quite a feather in your cap to be one of the 2 of them. And they were first you had to be a fraternity, and then they would have an initiation night in one of the fraternity houses, and they were pretty drastic. I'm glad they don't do anything like that now. They were pretty rough. I think generally, and I probably shouldn't say all this, but since it's archival and it's all gone and not going to be out, 11 clubs was 11 shots of gin, probably 11 1-ounces of gin. And there were some other things attached to that. I don't know, it was oysters on a string or something. Just gross, really gross. the way the black eye did it, I liked, because you had to finish a fifth in 2 hours. But you took good quality booze because the brothers could help you. And if you had good booze, they would help you drink your fifth. And at the end of 2 hours, you really hadn't had as much to drink as a fifth by any stretch of the imagination. And I can remember taking Canadian Club because that's what was the desired. And there weren't but about 3 of us being initiated, and so it wasn't a big deal. You know, it wasn't like you really drank a fifth of booze, and you got the lowest proof you could get. And you could get a low Canadian, like an 80 proof. And it was a smart thing to do, and that wasn't bad. But the next 2 hours were different. That was a shot of beer every minute for 29 minutes. Doesn't sound like much, does it?
No, it sounds like a lot.
Then you saved enough in your fifth so you could have a shot of the regular whiskey, and then 29 more shots of beer, and then another shot of whiskey, and it was all over. And it really was all over. There are not many of us that ever remember the second 29. But it was really the brothers and those that were doing the initiating and those that were initiating, it was a real, not much. Have you seen some of these pictures on the Marines where they brand the guys with their belt buckles and some of the tough stuff that the Marines go through? It was that type of thing. And it wasn't so much the drinking as it was the kinship that this group together bonded on this evening. And it, I'll tell you, black eyes were, you think Phi Caps were close together, but the black eyes, and that was interfraternity. That was a close group, a real close group of people. You do anything for each other, and it was just a bond that hard to realize. But it reminds me when I saw the movie on the Marine Corps, and I didn't think that was smart, and my son, who was in the Army, our youngest son, said, "Well, Daddy, isn't that sounds sort of like the black eye deal, you know?" And it was. It does build up. You know, once a Marine, always a Marine. Can't say that about the black eyes. And then you went to the dances. That was quite nice to burn a cork. You're supposed to have finished the bottle and take the cork and burn it and black your eye, and then wear a ribbon across the front of your formal shirt. That'd be a AKI, black letters on a red ribbon across your vest. And they gave you those. I don't even know who did them, where they came from, but they gave them to you, and you cherished it and held on to it. But then one day I was going into class in Pace Hall, and somebody came in and said that President Moreland wanted to see me. And I went in, and I was one of the first, but before the day was over, he had visited personally. He had the annual in front of him, every black eye and every 11 club. And he was checking them off the annual as he talked to us. And the thing was, the dean of his faculty, Gurlette Simpson, was the 11 club when he was here as a student. But we didn't remind Dr. Moreland of that. But anyway, we had to sign a pledge that we were gone, and there would be no more as of dark that night, or we wouldn't be at Randolph-Macon anymore. So we all signed up and had our meetings off campus from then on.
That's what our students would do now.
And I remember Dr. Moreland coming to the Panhandle meeting one night. He really wasn't aware of all this drinking, and all of a sudden he did somebody had really put a bug in his ear. So he came to a Panhandle meeting one night and said, "The ladies that keep your dates," see, our dates stayed in private homes in those days. That was, and they checked into these private homes by a certain time, most places, but at Randolph-Macon, we had some privileges that other schools didn't enjoy. I mean, if a gal from Randolph-Macon Women's College went to UVA, she had to be in by a certain time, and somebody in that house called Lynchburg and said they were all in and accounted for. And that wasn't true here. They trusted their ladies when they were in Ashland. But the ladies where they stayed sometimes didn't like the idea that they didn't come in until 3 o'clock in the morning, or sometimes all night. And I can tell you, it was all above board. We would sit and party all night in the fraternity house, and probably not drink, but just listen to music and dance and talk. We'd be up all night and take them in at daylight the next morning. And the ladies were the hostesses that were keeping the ladies for $2 a night or something that they charged. Got to Dr. Moreland, so they wanted to know when their ladies were going to come in at night. So Dr. Moreland came to the Panhandle meeting. With this Panhandle, you know what that was?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And said he wanted us to pick a time. And he went over this so many hours after a function, or how long would they be in the fraternity houses before they came home. And this wasn't just fraternity people. We had non-fraternity people with dates on weekends that came to our fraternity house. They were most welcome and enjoyed the hospitality, and we enjoyed having them. I mean, it wasn't a real we're in and they're not type of thing. And when it was all over, Dr. Moreland was told, if you want to set a deadline, you set it. Because if you set it, then they'd just leave the campus and go out in the field somewhere and do their visiting and partying, and I think they're better off in the fraternity house. And if one of them is killed on a highway going to and from that field, you put your name on the tombstone, not the fraternities. And he said, well, gentlemen, I knew you would understand. and took leave. and there was no curfew set up. There was no time. And he could go back to the ladies and say that he had made his appeal. But I was real, all of us were really serious. But you're a lot better off keeping the fraternity houses going than that. Because that's what they do at UVA when they kicked them out. They'd rent pastures from farmers and start bonfires, that sort of thing. But they're not going to go to bed just because you said they have to go.
Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about what you did after college?
Well, went into Richmond and got on an airplane and went to Columbus, Mississippi, and started aviation cadet program, learning how to fly. And the day that my degree was awarded here at Randolph-Macon, my brother got it for me. I was on a drill field, and I turned to my roommate and said, today I are a college graduate, and I got 2 gigs for talking in ranks. But it seemed to be worth it. Anyway, I went through pilot training and then Korea and B-29s out of Okinawa, and then came back to SAC for 2 years in transports, and then went to the graduate business school at UVA, which was just starting. I was in the 2nd class. And from there to a small textile company in Waynesboro for 10 years, and then I met Betty my last year at in grad school. She was a senior at Randolph-Macon Women's College, majored in economics. And we met at the World Trade Conference in Roanoke. I had been as a representative when I was a student here, but then I went as a representative from there, and she was a representative there. Ded Gullis used to put that thing on, who was Secretary of the State Chamber of Commerce. He was a FICAP from Randolph-Macon. Then I went with a friend in Baltimore for 2.5 years in corporate development, and this was the big Fortune 500 experience. A lot of time on Wall Street in the security analyst field, and then got a chance to go back to my graduate school at UVA and work in fundraising, alumni, and corporate development. And I did that for 13 years. And then Betty and I started our own business and opened the Country Inn at Wintergreen in 1983, and ran that for 16 years. And sold it, retired in 99. So it's kind of a varied, liberal arts helped me all the way.
So you've done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And how did you stay in touch with Randolph-Macon during
Well,
that
the first
time?
years it was all fraternity. That kept me close to the school. I don't know how long it was before I came back here. It was a number of. I didn't really get active until I was in Maryland, working in Baltimore. And I got active in alumni then. But I'd done some work in the alumni chapter up in Waynesboro, but not much. Hadn't really done much. And got interested until I got up there. Rodney Jones and Henry Carter came up to see me one time and asked me if I'd go on the alumni board. The next thing I knew, they made me president of the alumni. And I found it was a 2-year term, not a 1-year. That was a good experience. And that kept me there. And then Susan always has a way, it seems, to find something for me to do down here. So it's been an easy attachment. I'm sorry, off the record.
Y'all ready?
Yeah. Your family has a scholarship.
No, let me straighten that out. Betty's mother has a portfolio that's not that big. It's no multi-million-dollar deal or anything. But Betty's folks have always been conservative and invested well. And I found out that the guy that's running it for her from the big bank in New York had never done anything with it. I mean, when something happens to her, it's all gone. I mean, Uncle Sam is going to get it all. And I said, that's ridiculous. We call her Gimme, and I said, Gimme, we ought to set up a foundation. And you could put everything in that because you don't need to leave anything for us. Just let's get it into a foundation. And so Uncle Sam didn't take your estate. She's 100 years old. It's not like she's going to live forever. And so they came down from New York, and they thought this was a great idea. And I wanted to say, why the hell didn't you think of it? If you're so great, such great money managers. So we got this set up, and it's complicated from a foundation to there's a charitable foundation, which is the end result of it all, and it's got to get rid of so much money every year in order to save its tax exempt stuff. And so Betty and I, Ted signs the checks also. We do that for here, and we were just making a contribution for here and her school and my school, not my graduate school, but the two Randolph-Macons. And then when they came along with the Brown Challenge, said if you're giving us $5,000 a year, why not put it into the Brown Challenge and then we can double it? So that's what we did. It was coming in as undesignated annual giving. And so they suggested the scholarship. And so that's what it is. And I said it should be, the Anna M. Dave. And she didn't want that. So it's the Dinwiddie Family Scholarship. But it's sort of came in the back door.
We'll take it any way we get.
Yeah, I know,
Front door, back door, we don't care.
But when you're in the fundraising business, you want as much undesignated money. You don't want it all designated. You couldn't live on all designated money. But because of the Brown Challenge, it was foolish. I guess we have 2 more years. And you do that for 5 years at $5,000 a year for 5 years, and then that's funded. And we can go back to the undesignated gift, I think.
Is the scholarship then for any specific student? I mean, is it
Totally free.
It's not for business econ or?
Nope, no restrictions. I wore the other hat for a while. I don't like those restrictions, so it comes in the way you all want it, we don't designate any of it. You know better how to spend the money than we do. So, but it is scholarship money.
Mm-hmm.
And I always maintain if it's going to be designated, that's where it ought to be. I don't understand college finances that well. But if there were enough scholarship money, then everybody had a scholarship. It would be very easy bookkeeping. All you do is make a money transfer from the scholarship fund over to the operating fund of the college. And I said that to one of the guys at Darden, and they said, that's heresy for you to talk like that. And I said, well, that's the way I feel about it. Why should I give you undesignated money when I can put it in a scholarship? Because of the income you get from scholarships, you don't need the undesignated money. If tuition, you run your school on tuition. And if the tuition is paid by scholarships, well, he couldn't see that. But have you seen what they've done at Stanford?
Mm-hmm.
Just this in the last month, and they're going to make them do it at Harvard. They've got so much of an endowment, they ought to start giving it to the students. And now anybody, I don't know how they're going to make all those decisions at Stanford, but they're going to, if you're making under $100,000 family income, you've got a free tuition.
Mm.
And that's the way it ought to be. Didn't mean to get off on
59.
all of that, but that's one of my pet peeves.
Mm-hmm. Well, that was one of our questions. And you are active with SOSO through
The Rotary.
The Rotary. And SOSO is a student here at Randolph-Macon now. He has a full name.
I'd have to get a book out and read it to you. Do you know how to pronounce it?
No.
Does your husband know how to pronounce it?
Yes, my husband can
He
pronounce
does?
it.
It begins with an M, but I think I have him in my book under S. Yes, I do. It's ISOB is his first name. We call him SOSO. M-A-M-U-K, Mamuk. E-L, Mamukal. Ashvili. A-S-H-V-I-L-I. Mamuki Mashaveli. Something like that.
Okay.
Betty can almost say it.
And
I
through the
don't have-
Rotary, how does that work? What is your relationship with
Well,
them?
Rotary it's an international organization, and one of the things we like to do are international students. You can get a Rotary fellowship and get a all tax-paid deal to a foreign school, where you have to worry about your own acceptance. And when I was president of Rotary in Waynesboro years ago, we had a young man that we got sent to France on a Rotary fellowship. Well, here's one that's coming from Russia that we were paying for coming this way. And he lived with a lady on the mountain at Wintergreen. And I wasn't in a position, I didn't meet him until after he'd gotten here. Really had very little to do with it. And then the club, Rotary International, paid the way and did all of the business, but we were the host club, and so we were responsible for him. And actually there were several members of Rotary had children the same age, and so that fell in basketball and that sort of thing. So I really didn't see that much of him other than when he always came to Rotary meetings. And I asked him where he was going to college. Was he going back to Georgia? Or was he he'd like to stay over here and go to school? Where are you planning? He said, well, I've applied to Yale and Harvard, and Princeton, and William and Mary, and great. And he hadn't heard anything. And I said, you ought to try at Randolph-Macon. And so he said, okay. And so Joanne brought him down here, and he liked what he saw. And he put in his application, and he hadn't heard anything. And we were getting along into the spring of the year. So I called down and I said, do you have an application from SOSO? Well, they didn't know who the hell I was talking about. And I finally had to go through what I just did with you and get his name, and they said, yeah, we do. But his TOEFL is not even up to 200, meaning his foreign language ability of second language. He could make it. And I said, well, wait a minute, when was that test taken? She said, in August. I said, well, you know, this is April, and he's made Dean's List in an English-speaking high school. So do you think his English has improved some since he took that test? Well, why don't you send him down for an interview? So Joanne brought him down for an interview. Boy, they jumped on top of it. Have you seen the paper that he wrote on the Christian influence in Georgia? It is awesome. Just awesome. This kid is smart. He is really something. I can't believe it. He talks too fast for me to understand everything he says. But I asked him what he thought of our new president. Well, he gave me about a 10-minute dissertation, and he was talking about the president of Georgia, and I thought he was talking about the president of Randolph-Macon. It was so fast. But he's got some very definite opinions of what's happening over there. And very smart young man and very likable. So that was my relationship with him. But Harvard or Yale would have just. I'm glad they didn't get him because they would have ruined him.
The value of a small liberal arts education.
Well, that's right. And good, sound. He still believes in capitalism and making a profit and that sort of thing. He doesn't believe the government ought to give you everything. We make sure in Rotary that he gets that, that treatment. So that was, Joanne is the one that really deserves. In fact, as a matter of fact, the last meeting that we had, alumni meeting up there when President Lindgren was there, I made sure that she attended. I invited her and got to meet Bob, and he found out what she was. You know what I found out then? He was a Rotary fellow. He was sent by Rotary to Oxford. Was it Oxford he went to?
Mm-hmm.
I think he was a Rotary fellow at Oxford. And he said Rotary changed his life. And any time we needed a speaker, he would be there. He loved to speak to Rotary clubs and talk about that experience. And that's something, and I didn't know that.
I did not know that.
He's a pretty special guy, too.
Mm-hmm.
Very fond of him and what he's done for us.
Well, we very much appreciate your time today. Did we miss anything?
Everything I made a note of here, I think you covered.
Okay. So we don't want to miss any good stories.
Well, I think sports were an important thing when I was here, too. I don't
Okay.
think I ever missed a baseball game or a basketball game. I know I never missed a football game. And sometimes I did it when I should have been studying.
Mm-hmm.
But I was a distant relative on my mother's side to Mrs. Simpson, the dean's family.
Mm-hmm.
And Henry and I still talk about third cousins once removed or something as our kin. But I remember having lunch over there one time because he always invited somebody from fraternity for Sunday night supper or lunch or something. All of us at one time or another had a meal with the Simpsons over there, just sometimes 2 or 3 of us at a time. They were really great with the students. And I remember we called her Cousin Caroline. I did. And I remember Cousin Caroline saying, "Mac, it's so-and-so and so this afternoon." He said, "Well, I'm sorry." She said, "You can't do that for me." And he said, "Oh, there's a baseball game." So the faculty did go to baseball games. And we had a good baseball team, and it was, we had good sports. And that was, I was talking about volunteer leadership. Our tennis coach was a little lady about that tall. And she had been a doubles partner with some world-renowned tennis player. But she was our tennis coach, men and women. She was really a neat little lady. And Lala Roth with the drama department. I'm not sure that Troxel wasn't part-time to start with.
I think he was.
And then he... I can't think of anything else.
Well, thank you very much for coming. We really do appreciate your time and this glimpse into a period of Randolph-Macon history we don't have very much on.
Good luck in your program. It sounds great.
Thank
Your
you.
project.